Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a play. The tension in Washington reached its boiling point late last night, and it all started when Adam Peters, the Commanders' general manager, reportedly demanded answers after another disappointing loss that left fans fuming. Sources close to the organization claim Peters stormed into the facility early in the morning, visibly frustrated, and asked for an emergency meeting with ownership. The energy inside the building was described as chaotic and on edge, with whispers spreading that something big was about to happen. Dan Quinn, who was hired to stabilize the team after years of inconsistency, suddenly found himself at the center of the storm. Players had noticed the growing distance between Quinn and the front office over the last few weeks, and several insiders hinted that Peters had been losing confidence in his head coach. By midday, that frustration had reportedly boiled over into direct confrontation, with Peters allegedly asking, "What's our identity? What are we even doing out there?" It was clear that patience was gone. The front office had expected visible progress, but instead, the same problems: undisciplined play, poor red zone execution, and a defense that looked lost, kept haunting the team. Something had to give, and fast. What followed was an exchange that has since become the talk of the entire NFL community. Josh Harris, the team's principal owner, didn't hold back in his response. According to multiple accounts, Harris fired back with a firm and final tone. "No excuses, Dan Quinn is out." The room reportedly went silent. Harris's statement wasn't just a reaction. It was an execution of authority, the kind that signals a complete shift in direction. Quinn, who had entered the year with high hopes and promises of turning Washington into a tough, disciplined unit, suddenly found himself unemployed before the season even hit the halfway point. The players, many of whom had admired Quinn's leadership, were said to be shocked. Some even found out through social media before any official announcement was made. Peters, meanwhile, seemed resolute but not satisfied. He had been one of the key figures in convincing ownership to take a chance on Quinn after his defensive success in Dallas, and now, just months later, that decision had completely unraveled. As the story spread across the league, the speculation machine went into overdrive. How did it get to this point so quickly? Insiders say the relationship between Quinn and the front office began to fracture after a series of questionable calls and lackluster performances that raised doubts about his command of the locker room. The breaking point, however, came after the latest home loss, one in which the Commanders looked disorganized from the first snap to the final whistle. Peters was reportedly seen shaking his head in disbelief in the press box, and when he left the stadium, cameras caught his grim expression. That was the moment, many believe, when the clock started ticking on Quinn's tenure. Behind closed doors, there were debates about whether firing him mid-season would create more instability or send a message. Clearly, Harris and Peters chose the latter. They wanted accountability, and they wanted it now. The message to the team was unmistakable: no one's job is safe. Now, with Quinn out of the picture, the Commanders find themselves staring into an uncertain future. Who steps in next? Will this shakeup ignite a spark or further deepen the chaos? Reports suggest that Peters might take an even more hands-on role while the team searches for an interim head coach. Some names are already floating around, from young assistants eager for their first shot to seasoned veterans who could steady the ship. But the truth is, Washington's problems run deeper than just coaching. The roster is talented on paper but inconsistent on the field. The offensive line remains a glaring weakness, and the quarterback situation continues to divide fans. This isn't just about one man losing his job. It's about an organization still trying to define its identity after years of false starts and shattered expectations. The fan base, as always, is split right down the middle. Some believe Harris made the right call, showing that mediocrity will no longer be tolerated, while others think it's yet another example of impatience and dysfunction. After all, how many times can one franchise hit the reset button before people stop believing in the process entirely? Social media exploded with reactions, memes, takes, and heated debates, with some even wondering if this was the start of a complete teardown. For years, Commanders fans have been promised change, and yet here they are again, watching another coach walk out the door before finishing his first season. The frustration is palpable, but there's also a strange sense of relief. Maybe, just maybe, This could be the turning point the team needs, provided the next move is made with precision rather than panic. For Dan Quinn, it's a devastating blow to his reputation and perhaps his last real chance at redemption as a head coach. After a Super Bowl appearance with Atlanta and a strong defensive legacy in Dallas, many believed he had learned from past mistakes and was ready for a fresh start. Instead, his time in Washington will be remembered as a cautionary tale about expectations, pressure, and timing. Insiders claim Quinn felt blindsided by the decision, though he sensed the tension growing in recent weeks. His post-game press conferences had become shorter, more defensive, and visibly strained. Now, as he packs up his office, the question lingers. Was he the problem, or just the latest scapegoat in a franchise that can't seem to escape its own shadow? Either way, the Commanders are back in the headlines, and not for the reasons they wanted. The aftermath of Dan Quinn's firing has left the Commanders' facility in a strange mix of relief and confusion. Players showed up to practice looking around for answers, and many were met with silence. Assistant coaches try to keep things moving, but the atmosphere was noticeably heavy. It's not just about losing a head coach, it's about losing stability, something Washington desperately craved. Adam Peters, now seen as the most powerful voice in the organization, reportedly addressed the team behind closed doors, telling them that accountability would be the new standard. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He emphasized that everyone, from rookies to veterans, needed to elevate their performance or risk being next. Some players described the speech as intense but necessary. Still, there's a feeling that this move could either rally the locker room or split it apart completely. Leadership will be key in the coming days, and whoever steps up next has to manage not only the XS and OS, but also the emotional fallout that comes with a mid-season firing of this magnitude. Meanwhile, Josh Harris has made it clear that he's done with excuses. His "no more talk, just results" approach has drawn both praise and criticism from across the league. Some owners see it as a bold stand, proof that Harris is serious about changing the culture, while others view it as impulsive and potentially damaging to the team's long-term stability. What's certain is that Harris has drawn a clear line in the sand. Insiders say he wants a fresh culture built around discipline, adaptability, and innovation, qualities he felt were lacking under Quinn. In private conversations, Harris reportedly expressed disappointment not just with the record, but with the lack of energy and accountability on the sidelines. He wanted to see fire, urgency, and hunger, traits he's seen in successful franchises elsewhere. For Harris, this wasn't just about losing games. It was about losing conviction. And that, he decided, couldn't continue. The Commanders' next move will define whether this bold decision was a masterstroke or another misstep in a long saga of frustration. Now, the search for a replacement is already heating up, and the rumor mill is in overdrive. Some insiders believe Peters has his eye on a young, offensive-minded coach who can maximize the team's raw potential and develop their quarterback. Others suggest a veteran presence could be more effective, someone who can command respect immediately and bring calm to the chaos. Names like Eric Bieniemy, who remains within the organization, and former head coaches from around the league have surfaced in early chatter. Bieniemy, in particular, is a fascinating option. He's been waiting for his chance to prove himself, and this could be the perfect storm. Yet, promoting him would also come with risk. The offense has struggled this season, and giving him full control could invite more scrutiny. Peters and Harris will have to make a decision that balances short-term stability with long-term vision. Every move from here on out will be watched, analyzed, and dissected under the harshest spotlight possible. For the players, the challenge now is mental. How do you stay focused when your head coach is suddenly gone, when the playbook could shift overnight, and when your own future might depend on what happens next? Veterans are expected to step up, particularly those in leadership roles, to keep the team unified. Sources say several captains held the players' only meeting to clear the air and set the tone for the weeks ahead. They reminded everyone that, despite the turmoil, the season isn't lost. But maintaining that belief will take more than words. The locker room dynamic is fragile, and one or two bad performances could completely unravel what's left of team chemistry. At the same time, this kind of upheaval can sometimes spark a surprising resurgence. Teams that hit rock bottom often find an edge, a collective chip on their shoulder, that pushes them to play their best football. The question is whether Washington can channel that energy constructively, or whether it will sink deeper into the chaos that's defined its recent history. The media frenzy, as expected, has been relentless. Sports talk shows are dissecting every angle, from Peters' decision-making to Harris's leadership style, to what this means for the Commanders' long-term strategy. Former players and analysts are weighing in, some defending the firing as a necessary jolt, others calling it a symptom of deeper dysfunction. Even rival executives have chimed in anonymously, suggesting that the Commanders may have acted out of panic rather than principle. Social media continues to amplify the noise, with fans demanding transparency about what really happened behind the scenes. There are reports that Quinn and Peters had clashed over personnel decisions, particularly defensive rotations and game planning. If true, that would explain the tension that had been simmering for weeks. Regardless of the details, one thing is certain. The Commanders have once again become the center of NFL drama, a storyline that no one can look away from, even if most fans are shaking their heads in disbelief. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. As the dust settles, Washington faces a defining crossroads. This could either be the beginning of a new era built on accountability and change, or yet another chapter in a cycle of instability that refuses to end. Adam Peters now holds the keys to the franchise's future, and every move he makes will shape his legacy. Josh Harris has drawn the line. Results over reputation, action over talk. The fans, meanwhile, wait anxiously, hoping this is finally the moment when their team stops rebuilding and starts competing. But history hasn't been kind to the Commanders, and optimism doesn't last long in this city. If they get this next hire wrong, the consequences could echo for years. Yet, if they get it right, if they find a leader who can truly inspire, unite, and command respect, then maybe, just maybe, this storm will be remembered not as the collapse of another era, but as the spark that finally set the foundation for something lasting. For now, though, all Washington can do is hold its breath and brace for whatever comes next. The shockwaves from Dan Quinn's sudden firing are still rippling through the NFL, and insiders say this could have a domino effect beyond Washington. Coaches across the league are paying attention, realizing how quickly the temperature can rise when results don't match expectations. The Commanders' decision to cut ties this abruptly signals a new standard, one that demands immediate performance, no grace period, no excuses. For a franchise that has spent years trapped in mediocrity, this may be the boldest attempt yet to break that cycle. Yet, it also raises serious questions about patience and process. Building a winning culture takes time, and burning through coaches has never been a recipe for sustained success. Still, Peters and Harris seem determined to rewrite the narrative. They're betting that a culture shock now is better than years of quiet failure later. As one team source reportedly put it, they'd rather be criticized for acting too soon than for staying stuck too long. That's the tone in Ashburn right now. Urgency, intensity, and a sense that Washington has officially entered a no-nonsense era. The rest of the NFL might scoff, but nobody can deny. Something very different is brewing inside the Commanders' walls. What happens next will determine whether this chaos becomes a catalyst or just another cautionary tale in franchise history. The next few weeks are critical, not just for the Commanders' playoff hopes, but for their entire organizational identity. Peters must now find a leader capable of handling the pressure cooker that is Washington football, someone who can connect with players while executing a vision that finally brings stability. Josh Harris, meanwhile, must balance his newfound assertiveness with strategic patience. Reactionary moves can only take a team so far. Fans, exhausted but still loyal, crave a sign of direction, something that says the pain of constant change will finally pay off. The Commanders have talent, resources, and now, a front office unwilling to tolerate mediocrity. But unless that energy is harnessed with clarity and purpose, it risks turning into the same chaos that has defined the team for decades. For now, Washington stands at a cliff's edge, one step from resurgence, one step from disaster. The difference will depend entirely on what Adam Peters and Josh Harris choose to do next. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders.